Ahoy! And welcome to Manning Overboard. Happy Hour with Hotcakes and the Captain. A show about the good in liquid life.
Where we talk about bars, bartending, and booze.
She's Hotcakes.
And he's the Captain.
Thanks for coming aboard. Now, let's go overboard. Ahoy, and welcome to Manning Overboard. Happy Hour with Hotcakes and the Captain. I am the Captain, Rich Manning, and with me as always is the lovely and talented, my wife, Heather Hotcakes.
Hi.
How
That's
are
me,
you?
Heather Hotcakes, yeah.
How you doing?
I'm well.
Good. So, Hotcakes, what are we drinking today?
As always, we are drinking in honor of our guests. So, today we are drinking two cocktails created by them.
Phenomenal.
Today is the first time we're having two guests on. So, for you, I created the Bensonhurst. Well, I didn't create it. I made the Bensonhurst.
Yes.
This cocktail is 2 ounces of rye, 1 ounce of dry vermouth, 2 teaspoons of maraschino liqueur, and 1 teaspoon of Chard.
Beautiful. No, I'm excited to drink this. And what did you make for yourself?
And for myself, I made the Tequila East Side, which is 1.5 ounces of Blanco tequila, some cucumber, some mint, simple syrup, and 1 ounce of lime juice.
Okay, that sounds great. Less talky, more drinky.
But first,
Yes.
why don't you introduce our guests?
Okay, I guess we get to do that. I'm so excited about these cocktails.
I know.
All right.
Introduce them, please.
All right, so we're welcoming two guests today. Our guests are Chad Solomon and Christy Pope. These two are titans, and their fingerprints are all over the industry. Both worked at the legendary bars Milk and Honey and Pegu Club, alongside greats like Sasha Petrosky and Audrey Saunders.
Might have heard of them.
Yeah, a little bit. They opened the seminal hotel bar Midnight Rambler in Dallas, proving that you can indeed have incredible drinks in a Midwestern hotel, and of all places, you know. So very, very important there. They also co-founded Cuffs and Buttons, one of the first ever beverage-only catering consulting companies.
Fantastic.
Chad is credited with pioneering the dry shake technique, which is kind of fun. It's a great tool for a bartender to have in their arsenal. Chad also created the Bensonhurst cocktail.
Lovely.
Which I'm currently going to be enjoying soon. And this cocktail was also supposed to be the spark that got he and Christy involved with the Cooper Spirits Company, the independent producer of Hold That Bottle Up, Lock, Stock, and Barrel Rye, pioneering RTD, Hotch Statler's Slow and Low, and I know I butchered that. I'm sorry about that, guys. And the bartender's ketchup known as St-Germain. So today, Christy's the director of brands of marketing for Cooper Spirits, and Chad's the director of innovation. But today, we're just going to call them legends. So, Chad and Christy, welcome to Manning Overboard.
Yay! What are y'all drinking?
Cheers.
Great to be here with you guys.
Thank you.
So I'm having a Slow and Low coffee old fashioned.
Perfect.
Phenomenal.
Yeah. Straight rye whiskey, Intelligentsia cold coffee, raw honey, demerara, and Angostura bitters with a bit of navel orange as well as an orange zest over the top. So I can always have coffee in my life. So coffee it is.
And I'm drinking a Slow and Low 6-year-old 100 proof old fashioned.
Oh,
Fantastic. No, I've seen...
With an orange twist.
Yeah, I've seen those bottles, and they look tremendous. So, awesome.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
It's thrill. And, I mean, hold on. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's going in the rotation.
Delicious.
Definitely, yeah. No, I mean, and no hyperbole, gang. You are both legends, and just going through your history and just all of that, you've left such a huge imprint on multiple aspects of the drinks industry. So it's really a thrill to talk to you. And, obviously, you guys are partners in business, partners in life, and stuff like that. So tell me about your process. But before that, you're looking at me.
I was going to say, that's a big question. Tell me about your process.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what.
Rich, you're going to have to buy us some more drinks.
Right? I mean, that's a loaded question,
no, what I mean by that is...
let's
I
start
like
at the
it. Let's do it.
beginning. Let's start
Yeah.
at the beginning. How about that?
However you want to do it.
Let's rewind a little bit. You all got your start back. Well, I don't know if you got your start back in New York, but tell us a little bit of how you got your start in the bartending industry and how you came to be working at Milk and Honey and Pegu Club.
Sure, I'll start off. Our origin stories are somewhat similar in the sense that both of us moved to New York to work in the music industries for different reasons. I'll let Chad elaborate on his. But when I was in college, I interned for Capitol Records for 4 years, and so did a lot of marketing around the different artists that we had. I toured with Duran Duran. Did some really fun stuff in music. Music was my big passion at the time. And I got a job working for an independent dance label in New York City. And so that brought me to the big city from Florida, which is where I went to college. And in New York, I fastly found that the evening was way more exciting than the daytime. So, it didn't take me long before I quit my job in the music industry and was out living the nightlife. And in living the nightlife, I started DJing. So I was DJing all around New York, and that had me in bars. So I wasn't doing like big club style DJing, but more in bars. We had several DJ nights, and that put me in the bar realm, right? And so I was kind of seeing what was going on in the bars while kind of doing the music side of things. And I had a roommate. I lived in a loft in Chinatown. There was 5 of us who lived in this loft in Chinatown, and my roommate who worked at a club called Tonic, which was like a really cool independent jazz, alternative music space. And he was the first person that had, stumbled upon this like place that had no name, or he didn't know the name, but it was like, you could only go at certain times, and you had to like knock at the door, and you had to like go behind a curtain, and like, I would hear all these stories. Of course, that place was Milk and Honey. And my roommate's name was Marcus. And so Marcus took me there a couple times. And of course, when you walk through that black velvet curtain into the portal that was Milk and Honey, it was like traveling to another time, another space, another world. It was very, just all your senses were, activated into something that was just totally different and unique. And because we lived in Chinatown, which was just a walk away from Lower East Side, which is where Milk and Honey was, we became regulars. And through going in there, Sasha at that time was he would sit down with every table and talk to people. And I think I was in there talking about how I needed a job. I think, whatever was going on, like I need more work. And he was like, well, I need a cocktail waitress. And he was like, well, do you have any experience? And I was like, no, I have none. And he's like, you're perfect. That was a preference of his that, I didn't have any experience, and that he could teach me from scratch, so to speak. Sure. And I got hired at Milk and Honey the Thursday before 9/11. And I'll kind of segue to you here because 9/11 is integral into how Chad and I met.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's similar to Christy. I moved to New York, playing in bands, playing in music. And while I was going to film school, and I'd live in New York, in between film school years, and ultimately moved to New York full time and put music aside to work in production. Worked in production for about 2 years, and then 9/11 happened, and I was faced with, overnight you had about 75,000 film workers out of work. And I was really, very junior, low on the totem pole, still trying to get established. So it was really the choice was move to LA, or wait it out in New York. And a buddy of mine, he was like, you should jump behind a bar. But he's like, you being you should, there's a spot in the Lower East Side called Milk and Honey. He goes, you'll learn how to make drinks. It's unlike any other bar. He's like, the owner wants specifically people without experience. And he made an intro to Sasha at the time. Obviously, that bar was Milk and Honey. Sasha didn't need anybody in that moment. And so I was looking for work. This had been September, October. He recommended me to another spot at the same time, the Cellar Bar in the Bryant Park Hotel in Midtown.
Okay.
And so I went for an interview there, and I was supposed to interview with a woman named Natalia. And I walked in and I saw Christy Pope sitting there, who I had yet to meet. And I walked up and I said, "Hey, are you Natalia?" She's like, "No, I'm not, but I'm waiting for her as well." So Christy got interviewed first. Then I interviewed, and I got hired to bartend at the Cellar Bar. And so I started, whatever the following week. I'm there for a week or two, and then one night Christy comes in. I was like, "Oh, you got hired too." And then back then, bartending especially really had yet to make that leap where there was even an avenue to be a professional working bartender, to be careerist about it, and so the talk, especially in hospitality in New York, is, well, what else are you doing? And I mean, the talent pool that served and bartended in New York at the time, you had kids with, college degrees, master's degrees. The talent pool was amazing in terms of, very, very ambitious people that, you could make an incredible living serving bartending, but also working on whatever else you were going to do. So inevitably I'm like, "Hey, Christy, what else do you do?" And she's like, "Oh, and all the various, other outside hospitality." But she's like, "Oh yeah, I work at this little bar called Milk and Honey." And I was like, "Oh, I've heard of that." I was like, "My friend knows Sasha." And so she immediately is not impressed, rolls her eyes, and
Everybody knows Sasha.
Yeah, I would come to understand. But so that we meet in October 2001, and fast forward, we kind of start dating in April of 2002. And that is my entry into Milk and Honey. And so I bartended at the Cellar Bar. We both always, Milk and Honey is a tiny bar.
Right.
Yeah.
There was 34 seats, only 4 bar stools. There was a standing rail for 3-4 people tops. And, it's in all the mythology, what you don't realize is that the person with all the power in the room was always the server. And the model was very smart in that, look, there's only one bartender at a time. It's like an F-16 cockpit. It's the greatest bar to work behind because of the proportionality. Sasha used to call it, the economy of motion. It's one of the, the kind of the core tenets that, was impressed upon us, was being really smart with your motion and how your mise en place is set up and how the bar, but you only had 4 stools, 4 guests in front of you, and with no menu, the person on the floor is the one making the recommendations, coming back and informing what the bartender is going to make.
Sure.
And so, it was to be brought into that. I remember the first time, Christy took me there, Joseph Schwartz was bartending. And as Christy called out, when you walked, first of all, Chinatown, Lower East Side, it's Lower East Side, but Chinatown had really, expanded and kind of swallowed that street. There was no street light. The bar didn't open until 9 p.m., whereas everybody else is opening at 5.
Sure.
Milk and Honey opened at 9. And there was no, street lights, or a lot of the seafood markets, the street did not particularly smell well between garbage. And especially in the summer months, it was quite rank. It was, there was not a whole lot going on outside the bodega on the corner. And so, the part of the charm and the romanticism in New York is you have this idea that there are these secret, places that exist that you can stumble into. And when you walk through that dual, black velvet curtain and you walked into that room with that candlelight and the incredible Venetian plaster, and then, the way that everybody dressed back then it was like stepping back in a time portal into the jazz age with that soundtrack. The sound of that shaker, because the ice was totally different. It just, in every single way, it upended what your notion of what you thought a bar was, the way you interacted with the drink process. And then to watch Joseph bartend, I remember every light bulb went off. I was like, I want to learn how to make drinks like this.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that really kind of lit the fuse on a whole lot of curiosity.
No, that's fantastic.
And then fast forward, you move into the Pegu Club. You work with Audrey. You then come out to California. You open the Tar Pit in Los Angeles. You spend some time here in Orange County. So you have been all over the place making drinks from the East Coast to the West Coast and everything in between. How do you see the bar scene not just evolve as far as like from the very beginning of it to where it is now, but and this is a very broad question, I understand, but like
Almost as bad as my opening.
almost as bad as your opening, because there's been so many changes. Maybe the better question is, through this whole journey, what was probably your favorite part of the drinks journey, from starting at the very beginning to where you are now, where you are consulting and you have a drinks product and you have your program that you are running and you're opening up bars? What's been the favorite part?
Oh, I mean, well, bar none. I mean, to have been in New York in the early years, and what we weren't, we didn't have front row seats. We were active participants. So, I mean, to have lived in New York during that time, and then as it relates to your question, and the drinks business, bartending, cocktails, that period of discovery, curiosity, and that community, because it was new, because it was, there was nothing that was handed to us. I mean, this is 100% curiosity driven, with just an incredible group of people, very talented, very curious. The thing that hooked us in the beginning was kind of the history side. I like to cook at home, but I never wanted to cook in a kitchen. I mean, I never wanted to pursue that route. So the idea of being able to craft good drinks for yourself selfishly was like a motivator. But then all the cultural history. When you look at the American back bar, I mean, you've got, all these incredible cultural representations, a story that comes with every bottle. That's culture in a bottle. The history, of the drinks, the kind of, the trying to, especially back then, you've got these historical documents, these books and you're trying to decode, okay, if this was such a thing, what really made this thing? Because a lot of those recipes don't translate.
No, not at all.
No.
Today, and I listen to your recipes, as you call it, our drinks. The Bensonhurst, as I created it, because of the products have changed, I don't make that recipe anymore when I make it for myself, because we've been in the business long enough, and you start to watch the arc of the way these products change.
Sure.
Because and it's a moving. God, what are favorite bits? I mean, getting to work with Sasha, and that was a lifelong friendship until his passing. I mean, getting to work with Audrey, working with Julie Reiner. We both had stints at the Flatiron Lounge. I mean, Dale, getting invited, out to Dale and Jill DeGroff's home, and going to watch horse racing, and then it was just before all of the business elements. It was pure passion and pure curiosity. And so there's a really special time there. So that's kind of one. I think when Ryan, we had the opportunity to meet Ryan McGarrian on a trip with Simon Ford to Plymouth. We did one of the great Plymouth trips, and Sasha and Christy and I were on that trip together with an incredible group of people. And we met Ryan McGarrian, and Ryan is the one who, at the time, lifted us out of shift work. We stopped our shift work, bartending in January of 2007, and Ryan had created a consulting outfit called Liquid Relations, and we went to work with Ryan, and so that really took us around the world. So we had a unique vantage point of having our feet firmly planted in New York and doing cuffs and buttons events in that world, which was great to get in. That opened all manner of interesting doors for us, but also to how do you export this? How do you operationalize, and how do you culturize, other establishments? And so, Ryan and Kathy Casey had gotten the deal to do the Fairmont hotels, and we did. Christy and I participated with Ryan in building the original, I think they called it FAME, the Fairmont Artistic Mixology Experience. Okay. And so getting to go to, we did basically all of the Fairmonts in North America and a couple globally, but that is where it was like a bit of proof of concept in terms of how do you, because New York is this magical bubble where you've got, it is, there are only a couple of cities in the world where you've got every single factor: vertical density, the quality of the labor pool, access to incredible products, because of the global sourcing. And then you've got an audience with a lot of disposable income. You have a lot of, singles. You have a lot of curiosity. You just have so many magical factors. When you get outside New York, a lot of places don't necessarily have that.
Absolutely.
And how are you going to culturize? How are you systematizing? How do you operationalize these things that we had figured out, in New York to go on? And so that was an incredible kind of like strengthening another muscle that we didn't really know existed, because you're a motivational coach at that point.
Right.
Sure.
And I might answer that question a little differently, just in the sense of hindsight is 2020, right?
Absolutely.
You don't necessarily know what you're doing at the time that you're doing it, but as you look back and reflect, what is my favorite time period? It's really hard to say that one specific time, but I've been reading a lot or listening to a lot of podcasts with Robert Greene, and he wrote a book called Mastery. And one of the cool, dynamics that he talks about is the master and the apprentice, right? So if you look back at our early years in New York, we were definitely apprentices. We were underneath the tutelage of, Sasha. For me, Joseph Schwartz was a huge, personality that I learned so much from. Audrey, like Sasha was all about process and technique, and Audrey was all about flavor and aroma. And so like you're soaking all this in from these people at this time. And then, as Chad mentioned, we got the chance to kind of take that beyond New York City, out globally, as we were working with Ryan and Liquid Relations. But then it flips, right? Like when we went into doing the Tar Pit in LA and then doing Midnight Rambler, the dynamic starts to shift. You're no longer the apprentice, you are the master, or you're the one that people are looking up to. And, it's really, where do you like to be in that kind of, shift of what your role is? It's all fascinating, but I mean, I think it all stems from curiosity and, at what points of time are you like taking in the most amount of cool information that's like getting you excited?
Yeah.
I have two more answers. It's all right.
Go for it.
We just had the opportunity to do. To be honest, it's an embarrassment of riches. We've been afforded the opportunity to just to pursue our interest and curiosity within the business and be able to touch a lot of facets of it. And so I would say, Midnight Rambler was the apex in the experience, in that getting to build that room and be given complete freedom to 100% orchestrate that space, the experience, the beverage program. That was built to whatever idea we had. That room was built to be able to express it. And to have that, it ruins you in a way.
Sure.
Because once you've done that, what else do you do? And then the second part of this is getting to meet Rob Cooper. And, as impactful as Sasha and Audrey was, we're lucky. We got to partner with both of our mentors. We started a business with Sasha with Cuffs and Buttons, and Sasha approached us. There were so many different businesses that we kicked tires on together. And then we partnered with Audrey, and, we did the Tar Pit, and to be able to work with them, it was just incredible, gift, because it wasn't just a business thing. They were really, truly friends. And, obviously we miss Sasha. Audrey we're very close to. Rob was this another kind of lightning strike, event in our lives. Earlier, speaking of the Museum of the American Cocktail, we had the opportunity to go to New Orleans in January it was 2005. And at the then time, the opening of the Museum of the American Cocktail at the New Orleans Pharmacy Museum. And we had the opportunity, and we met Ted Hay, Dr. Cocktail, in person for the first time. Okay. And we met Robert Hess in person for the first time. And so that was a seminal moment in that. And so we were doing interviews with these guys, and we have, we filmed some interviews. And so Ted, his book, Vintage Spirits and Forgotten Cocktails, had come out in 2004. Very important book, especially for us in New York. That was when that book came out, Sasha bought copies and gave to all of us. And then
everybody. Yep. I love it.
Stake out a cocktail in that book, see if the recipe checks out, if you need to tweak it, and then we'll present it to the group and whether it gets adopted to go into the master spec sheet. Anyways, and that book is full of just incredible stories, products, and great drinks. And Cremavette was in that book, and the Blue Moon. And so as we're talking to Ted, we're asking Ted about, he has this legendary vintage spirits collection and how he put that together, and he drops Sky Cooper, Norton Cooper, who went by the name Sky, of Charles Jacques AC, and this Cremavette relation, and he's telling stories about calling Sky to hopefully prod him to revive Cremavette. And then he also drops, he's like, well, I've heard that Norton Cooper's son is working on an elderflower liqueur.
Right.
Well, a couple of weeks later, Sasha came back from Milk and Honey in London and comes back to New York, and he's like, oh yeah, he's like Simon Difford of Class Magazine, Difford's guy.
Yep.
Simon Difford brought a guy around and he's working on an elderflower liqueur. And so for us at the time, we had been working with Belvoir, which was an elderflower syrup, and then Michael Skurnick had his elderflower syrup.
Okay.
Michael Skurnick's was excellent, but when you'd open the bottle, it would ferment, and it was not shelf stable.
Right.
It would go sideways in the fridge. You only had a couple of days. Anyways, so I knew that this is happening. Summer 2006 in Pegu Club. One night I look down and I see Simon Difford come in the door. And Pegu was like this international crossroads. People from all over the world would come in for the drinks business, and it was like one of the required stops, in New York. So we got to know that was a great kind of, cultural exchange. So Difford comes up with this guy, and they pull out the sample of elderflower. And I was like, oh, you're Norton Cooper's son.
You're like,
so
I know you. I know this.
Yes.
And he doesn't realize I know. And so we sit there and taste this, and this is what would be, turn out to be St-Germain. And so we're talking. And so I said, well, this is really cool, but when are you going to bring back Cremavette? And so he was just kind of floored. He's like, well, how do you know about that? And how do you know my relationship to Cremavette? And so that started a great relationship. And so we had the opportunity to meet Rob and Katie that summer. Rob and Katie were, basically we're all in the same age range. And those guys, were a real amazing breath of fresh air. They built it a completely outside of Simon Ford. They're, Rob and Katie, they befriended the trade.
Yeah, bartender forward.
They were bartender forward, and the bartender forward company. And so at the time, Rob started giving me samples of St-Germain and asking for sensory feedback, how it worked in drinks, and he would make tweaks. And I wasn't the only one. There were several of us there, that worked, in the bars you've read about, and that kicked off a great relationship. And Rob, ended up coming back, and this turned into a much more fruitful collaboration.
Sure.
That's great. Now, speaking of collaborations, this actually gets me back to my initial loaded question. And it's not as loaded as it sounded. I was just so nerdy and enthusiastic that you guys were on our show. I couldn't believe it. But obviously, as partners in life, what I meant by your process is how often do you bounce ideas off of each other? As you work with Cooper Spirits, how often is that a collaborative process, or do you tend to work independently and then bring your stuff to each other that way?
All of the above. First of all, inspiration comes from anywhere. As we were engaged on this, Rob had the idea. If you look at, Cooper Spirits and, Rob's family, Rob is a third generation distiller. Rob's grandfather was named Morris Cooper. He was a brewer in Philadelphia, and ultimately got taken out by Prohibition, had to shut down. And he watched the, black market in the spirits trade, during Prohibition, which is obviously legendary. And he's like, I got to get into the spirits thing. And so he purchases Charles Jacques AC upon repeal. And with that came, the Charles Jacques AC was started in New York by a German gentleman by the name of I've tried every which way. I've never found his first name. It's S. Hochstadter. and Charles Jacquin. And so Mr. Hofstadter was clearly a German American, maybe a German immigrant, don't really know, but he was a wine and spirits importer. And Charles Jacquin was a restaurateur from France whose family had where they were liqueur and cordial makers. And so Mr. Hofstadter meets Jacquin and is like, hey, we should team up. And so we, Rob had in the family archives an old sales manual of the Hofstadter company from it looks from the 1890s, turn of the century. Their very first product that they produced themselves was Hofstadter's Rock and Rye. And so Rob was, if you ever had the opportunity to meet him, he's just one of the most intensely curious guys. And he was a real student of the business. He started working with his father, 5-6 years old. And it was just one of these guys that really understood all the cushions and angles, so to speak, of sales and marketing, history, production, sourcing, really high standards. And that he was like, he saw we were intensely into rye whiskey and rye whiskey cocktails. If you look at what built the cocktail revival, it's reviving the old rye whiskey drinks and gin drinks. And, it's American whiskey, which, the older drinks are going to be rye, not bourbon, and gin. And so Rob's got this Rock and Rye in the family archive and just really, really always forward looking, was like, hey, I want to revive this. But after Prohibition, Rock and Rye really kind of declines in quality throughout the 20th century. Rye whiskey basically doesn't really come back. Bourbon takes off.
Yeah.
And by the early aughts, rye's on life support. Bourbon's starting to come back. And we're fascinated in making these old rye cocktails. And, Rob saw I always say this, it's like, Slow and Low, Lock, Stock and Barrel. These two brands were born out of the cocktail revival and the rye revival in New York City.
Yeah.
And Rittenhouse was really the cherry on the, on top of the cupcake, because Audrey Saunders worked with Dave Wondrich to work with Heaven Hill to get us Rittenhouse in New York. And when she committed to a pallet to get Southern to take it on. And then Rob Schwartz with Southern, he took that on. And we opened Pegu on August 29th, 2005. We got that first Rittenhouse in October. And we had been making Dale DeGroff's Whiskey Smash, which Dale famously made with Makers at the Rainbow Room. We tried it with the Rittenhouse, and it was, we made that switch, and the rest is history. What happened from that point on was that mass adoption overnight of all the cocktail bars, all the best restaurant bars that had burgeoning good drinks programs. And Rob saw this and was like, he could see the future before anybody else. And he's like, I want to revive Rock and Rye and I want to modernize it as a rye whiskey old fashioned on an elemental level. If you look at the elements of Rock and Rye, it's basically an old fashioned. Swap the whorehound for bitters, but he, we use the phrase inspired by 19th century tradition, crafted with integrity. And what that meant was, okay, let's bring real rye whiskey back into the bottle. Because if you by that point, as we started having the conversation in 2008, none of the Rock and Ryes had aged rye whiskey.
Right.
Yeah.
And it may have been a blend of some rye whiskey and GNS. We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So there was like, let's bring back real rye whiskey. Let's re-examine the sugar. Let's do this the same way we're doing it, in the bar, in the best cocktail bars. So we totally brought the sugar down in line with that classic 1 sugar cube per 2 ounces.
Sure.
4 grams for 2 ounces. Let's bring in real bitters. Let's look at a maceration of real citrus to create a craft bar quality solution, for the home enthusiast, because there's not, the thing that's great about an old fashioned, there's nothing perishable in it. Citrus is the great, especially citrus juice in lime is the holy grail because it's so perishable and wants to oxidize. So that getting to collaborate, watch his process as just one of the genius marketers of our time in what they did with St-Germain was a real, just incredibly fun project to watch his mind at work and us to go from what really started as a naming project is the way it was approached. Slow and Low as an Easter egg name, Rob and Katie approached us about maybe throwing names in the ring, and the Bensonhurst was the reason why. Rob was like, he's like, you named a drink of all the Brooklyn neighborhoods, the Bensonhurst.
Yeah.
He thought that was hilarious because like, Vincenzo Erico, we worked with Milk and Honey, Vincenzo created the Red Hook.
Right.
And we all, the Brooklyn was this obscure cocktail, and we didn't have Ameripicone, but Ameripicone is the holy grail. We had a vintage bottle of Ameripicone behind the bar at Pegu. Christy and I had bought some vintage Ameripicone, but you could never put that on the menu.
Correct.
So the impetus for the Bensonhurst was like, hey, what's the closest we can kind of do to a Brooklyn? And it was a very quick drink to put together. Once again, all built on Rittenhouse at that time. And Rob just thought that was hilarious. And then some of the other things. So he came to us. He's like, I want to revive Rock and Rye as a bottled old fashioned. And, at Milk and Honey, we didn't have a menu. And so you had to qualify a guest, and and Christy's the expert in this because she was, she honed herself before getting behind the bar on the floor. And the best way to train yourself as a bartender to deal with people is to work the floor.
Sure.
There's honing your techniques. So it was an Easter egg name. We had names like, Stirred and Strong, Brown and Boozy, Bitter and Brown.
Sure.
And inelegant, but they got the point across. If you were trying to nail that first drink for the guest, you had to at least hit a triple, if not a grand slam out of the gate to gain their trust to recommend more drinks. And so Slow and Low is a euphemism for an old fashioned.
Okay.
And that kind of, that's where that comes from.
Oh, that's great. And I mean, just with your work with Slow and Low and the drinks that you're drinking currently right now, it's like, the RTDs, the ready to drink, you pour and you just enjoy, and that's really, really great. In fact, I think Slow and Low was like the first thing I heard, the first product that I heard that was kind of like that, where like you could have like an old fashioned coming out of a bottle. This is cool. Do you feel like there's a growing divide now that RTDs are all over the place? Do you feel there's a growing divide in sophistication between RTDs presented like what you guys do through Cooper Spirits and some of the canned RTDs that are out there now?
A divide how?
Just like in divide in sophistication. So do you think that there's a growing gap?
No. I'm gonna say no, because I think that we were very lucky. We were there on the ground floor of what is considered the second cocktail revival, in the early aughts, the golden era, late 1800s, early 1900s. But coming out of that, the bar was so serious. Everything was so serious. There was a knee-jerk reaction to that, which was, can we just have a great drink in a bar that's not so fussy and so stuffy and doesn't play jazz and you don't have to have a reservation? Like, can we just have a great drink in a dive bar, right? So that was like that next evolution. And then from there we had, kind of even COVID being a big kind of moment that happens after, where people need something more immediate, ready to drink, ready to go, to where we are now, which is, I think it all plays. Like, we're in a very interesting point in history, I think, just because if you look at fashion, everything is fashionable if it's done right. If you look at cocktails and drinks and spirits, they're the best distillates they've ever been, because the technology and the process and the ways that we make, spirits are far better than they've ever been. So the quality is there. And I think it's what you want, right? So there is a time and a place for a really amazing, ready to drink cocktail that comes straight out of a bottle. And there's a time and a place to go sit at a bar and have somebody make you something a la minute that is amazing and made with love and care. So I think that we're just like, everything is more in the sense that there's just a time and a place for everything at this point. I mean, that's maybe a very like Pollyannic answer to that, but I do think that, I don't think it's a divide. I think that there's, so like we're bartenders. We love going to a fantastic bar and having a bartender make us a drink, right? Like that is probably our favorite thing to do. But, we work with a lot of concert venues and, places where they need a consistent product at speed and velocity. And that's where something like a Slow and Low comes in and really shines, right? It's a fantastic product. Or, like if we're out on a boat and,
Right.
We just want something easy. It's like everybody has those moments. I mean, we call kind of in-house, we also love bartender vacation, right? Like, you know,
Yeah.
especially if you're actually bartending shift work and you come home, the last thing you want to do is sit down and like, you know, pour out your 5 ingredients and make a great drink. You know, it's like sometimes you just want something that's that easy.
Right.
No, absolutely, and you even get that in the bar. You don't have to be home. So one of our favorite bars in Los Angeles right now just opened recently called No Smoking Bar, and they have this incredible apple chuhai. So it's a soju canned cocktail. It tastes just like a slightly boozy. It's not even boozy, slightly alcoholic Manzanita Soul apple soda. And it's like, I don't care what they're slinging back there. Their drinks are great. I'm going to go in a no smoking bar. I'm going to have that apple chuhai every time because it's just great. And I think that's ultimately the thing too. Is like, what are you in the mood for? What do you want? And is that going to be of good quality? You can get that in a can, or you can get that in a bottle of your rock and rye or your slow and low and so like that.
Not the rock and rye.
Not the rock and roll, but the slow and low. Yeah, the slow and low. Yeah.
Is there a market these days in America that you feel is at the tipping point? Or maybe not a market. Is there a city that you think is at the tipping point in America right now to be the next big city for the cocktail community?
Well, you know, I think there's passion, culture, and then there's the cold hard business reality.
Okay.
And I think that this is Chase's rent.
Yes.
And real estate and occupancy cost. And so I would say, you know, Austin has just been on absolute fire. Nashville has been on fire.
Yes.
I would say, you know, coming out of the pandemic, looking at the Wynwood neighborhood in Miami,
Okay.
I think, you know, Chicago is, while it's a great American city, a great food town, I think Chicago has got an incredible scene. You know, in terms of the next, you know, that's the secondary and tertiary markets.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to say because, you know, there's labor pool and there's access to product. So really.
And then there's consumers that Uber.
Charleston, I think, is always constantly on the doorstep. I think I'm excited to see, you know, what Sean Muldoon and Jillian Vose are trying to get Hazel and Apple open.
Mm-hmm.
That's an incredible food town. I think, you know, there are some interesting things there.
I mean, I think there's all the realities that Chad just put forth, but the other thing is the consumer, and what we have seen in, you know, our time is that places where people don't have to drive as much. Places where we will Uber, which not everybody, I mean, you know, we were in Dallas, and Dallas is a driving town. People love to drive. They like to get in their car, they like to go, which means that they're going to limit their intake because they're doing that. So it's like where the cities where people adopt the habit, and this is where Austin is, I think, better suited as a breakout city, is this is an Uber town. Everybody will hop in an Uber. They won't think twice. They're walkable neighborhoods. Those are the type of environments and things that help escalate, you know, a cocktail movement, because people are able to imbibe without all the realities of, you know, having to get in a car and, you know, things that can happen if.
Absolutely, drinking and driving, being smart. Yeah. The one thing that New York does not have to deal with.
Yeah, but that's the one thing that's, as living in the greater Los Angeles area, that's something constantly on my mind when we go out for a tipple, because nobody walks in LA like the old song says, right? You know, it's like it makes it very difficult to go and have a crawl and hit 3 or 4 bars in LA, where in New York or even Austin, you know, you could do that without even thinking about it and have a quick and simple Uber ride home.
Yeah.
Well, I would say for the sake of Los Angeles, I really hope to see downtown come back. There's some incredible, you know, there is some walkable places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, there, I really hope to see.
And great cocktail culture.
Great cocktail culture, great establishments, clearly a lot of good talent.
Yeah, no, and that's one place. If you mention that, glad you mentioned that, Chad, because it is the one place in LA that we tell people like you can actually have a walkable crawl through there. You know, in the Arts District in LA, where obviously you have Death and Co, but then you have the Mermaid, which is the best bar nobody knows about because they want to keep it that way. You have the Let's Go Disco, which is running a show, an incredible program there. Manuela up the road, which is great drinks and really phenomenal food to get you going. So yeah, there are pockets, but from going to there to like, oh yeah,
Thunderbolt,
Silver
which
Lake,
is
Thunderbolt, and Echo Park, and then forget about going into the west side and seeing what Adam Fournier has up his sleeve at Accomplice. It's just tough.
but it's doable if you
But
know
it's
what you're
doable
doing.
if you know what you're doing. Yeah. So.
So you guys ask about process, and I gave probably a very meandering answer.
That's okay. I asked a very meandering question, so we're even.
but real talk. There is a process, and it all boils down to for me in my mind, the way I equate this is our value system, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we had the opportunity to get to work in environments that were value system driven. And so Sasha was very much process, and where every single day, can we make the mousetrap incrementally better? And the mousetrap will never, ever be done.
Right.
And so it was, can we just master the classics? And what is it? And how is it that everything, not just the drinks making, but every element of the guest interaction, the delivery, the drinks recommendation, the seating, everything, the total product experience, if you look at every element of that, how do we incrementally improve? Because you're not just making drinks. There's everything about that. So so that was years of, it can always be better. It's never good enough. It's always got to be better. And then Audrey, which was, okay, we're going to take classic structures and what can we do to build a new vocabulary? We live in the modern world. We've got access, especially in a city like New York at that time, access to the greatest product from anywhere. Well, what can we do? And then how do we leverage relationships with the culinary community and best practices to create better drinks and go to the kitchen and develop better kitchen techniques to create better house-made ingredients to build better drinks, right?
Yep.
At the end of the day, it all boils down to this, and tuning and building your instrument and your palate, and you taste. And then you build your sensory targets, you build your sensory values. And I don't care what ABV level, low or high, what the drink is, what drink style, at the end of the day, across that range, your sensory targets are always going to be there. So as it relates to, innovating products for Slow and Low, an idea can come from anywhere in the team. And ideas have come from everywhere, whether it's Katie, I've come in with stuff, and then we say, okay, well, we want to explore this concept. Well, then it's sourcing. So, sourcing, great ingredients. It's defining the concept. Everything boils down to classics for us. If you really look at it, there are only 3 drinks.
Right.
Everything's a variation on those 3 drinks. And that's a very elemental approach. And it's arranging those elements, and you can rearrange them a million different ways. But once you define what the box is, then it's okay, let's get in there and let's keep combining until we hit those sensory targets. And that's, that's, I guess, very, very didactic, but
well, I would say it extends our range of experience, right? So like we use these values, whether or not we're bartending behind the bar, whether or not we're creating a new product and, new innovation, whether or not we're looking at what that product looks like, how ergonomically it feels in a bartender's hands, what that label says to a consumer. It's like you just have the value system that you use across all these different metrics upon which your current job title tells you that you have to work, right?
Or what the objective is.
Yeah, what the objective is. But it's all that stuff you've obtained from all the things that you've done before. collective process.
Absolutely.
No, and
And then you ask, yes, like I'll say, hey, Christy, whatever. And so sometimes she's like, oh, that's on something. Or so if you're like, that hadn't been.
That's not a thing.
Yeah. So, you know, I mean,
immediate shutdown.
No, you don't.
or she'll come to me with something, I'd be like, hell no.
Truthfully, there's a whole lot of that. Let's be real.
Yeah. I'd say there's way more on the cutting room floor than
Yeah, you edit a lot more than what you actually put out. Speaking of which, is there something new on the horizon? Is there anything new that's coming out that we should be on the lookout for?
Like a van, maybe.
Well, two things, I guess. I'll let Chad talk about new innovation, and I'll talk about what we currently have going on with Slow Low as a brand, which is our 2025 van tour, which will extend into 2026 as well.
Beauty.
But this has been a really, honestly, truly a very fun, exploration. I would say that this year started out as an exploration. We have this amazing 1978 Chevy G20 van that is hand painted, custom interior, the whole nines. We hired a van driver and he's hit the road. So far, he's been through 8 states, and we're hitting all manner of, events, be it, food, beverage events to music festivals, cultural stores like Duck Camp, which is a hunting fishing store. We're meeting people at retail tastings, like, you name it. The van is out there really just kind of spreading liquid to lips, tasting people on what Slow Low is, but more than anything, just being a face for the brand. Because what the brand stands for is, that kind of ease of use, which is really great for consumers. This is a consumer facing brand. And the van is just kind of meeting people where they're at and what they're doing and being kind of a cultural force. Innovation wise, Chad, you want to say what's new?
Yeah, so we have coming out here this fall, we're launching 2 new additions to the Slow Low portfolio.
Okay.
So we are bringing out a cherry old fashioned and a maple old fashioned. And so when we came on board in 2020, and we, as a team, we looked to create the first new innovation in the Slow and Low lineup. We created a coffee old fashioned, and that was based on Cafe Brûlot.
Okay.
Once again, inspired by 19th century tradition, right? And so Cafe Brûlot really is just not a drink made outside New Orleans, and really not in the grand public consciousness. But at the same way that Rob identified that Rock and Rye, on an elemental level, was basically an old fashioned, you sub Poorhound for bitters. If you look at on an elemental level, Cafe Brûlot is almost an old fashioned, add bitters. And then there's another obscure drink from the late 30s. It could be pre-prohibition, called the coffee house cocktail: coffee, liqueur, rye whiskey, bitters. But for us, it was like, hey, let's go and get. I don't want generic coffee. I don't want generic coffee flavor. I want to go and deal with. We're big coffee people at the house. And so we years ago had done an education event in LA in Silver Lake with Intelligentsia, and I was just so impressed with their approach to coffee. And so we reached out to those guys and had the opportunity to work with their director of innovation, Bailey. And first conversation, Bailey was like, "Well, tell me about your value system," and I was just like, "Oh my God." We're gonna get on like a house fire because and it was phenomenal working with those guys. And so the idea, when we really looked to lean into the house of the proper old fashioned as a brand, was Slow and Low. And so this became once again an elemental exploration. What are the you can have there's the cherry garnish, there's the various sweeteners. Without getting too far afield and getting cartoonish, what are things that we can look at, still that classic old-fashioned structure? And then if you go back to Jerry Thomas's second cocktail book, The Fancy Cocktail, where you bring in, liqueur modifiers, most famously maraschino, and orange curacao. We looked at, the fancy cocktail really, it opens up the palate a little bit. So after the success and with Intelligentsia, Christy and I have had the opportunity many years ago to meet Matteo Luxardo.
Okay.
And you think cherry? I mean, Luxardo, iconic Italian spirits producer.
Right. Yep.
And but in this case, I did not want the maraschino, which is obviously very famous for. I wanted the Sangue Morlacco and that gorgeous black cherry liqueur.
Sure.
That really jammy, got the gorgeous, kind of figgy marzipan, very, very full spectrum black cherry. So the cherry old fashioned is built around using the Sangue Morlacco. And then at the same time, for maple, there is an incredible single estate organic maple syrup producer in upstate New York called Crown Maple.
Okay.
And that's what we used in our program at Midnight Rambler. I had the opportunity to meet those guys. I think it was in 2012 at an event in New York. And that is, ambrosia straight from the maple tree. Right. So we've built a maple old fashioned built around their maple syrup.
Fantastic.
So that's
great.
This fall.
This fall. Okay.
This fall.
So we can
Excellent.
look out for that this fall.
Definitely. So one last question, really quick, because you mentioned people like Dale and Audrey, Julie, Sasha, obviously. Do you feel it's important for today's newer bartenders to understand the legacy of those names and what you did 20 odd years ago?
I think it's very important for people to know the lineage of the bar industry as a whole. So, I mean, even before those names, really going back to how the craft got started, to Jerry Thomas, to the first bar books, like
Willard, Cato.
Correct. I mean, I think there's such a rich history. I mean, it's known to some and not to others, but we've written numerous things and we've tried numerous times to get a cocktail documentary together. But really, because the history is so fascinating and the ups and the downs and the cultural, movements that have made bartending boom and bust and just all the things. But, it's such a rich history and it is a trade first and foremost. That's one of the things that I would say that I learned from Sasha was just, what we do is a trade. It's a skill and it's learning to do that skill at its highest form. Creativity is great, but it doesn't have to be about creativity. It is about the process. It's about the skill. It's about the trade. And if you go back and you look at bartending, like just the honor and the, craftsmanship that goes into that trade is, I think, extremely important. And thankfully, we've lived through the more modern era and we have these other people that we can look up to as mentors. But I think, we are still one industry where people try to run before they walk. And I think it's like, you don't just go and do ballet, right? Like you don't like run straight onto a stage and do Swan Lake. There are like steps that you learn along the way that help you get to that point. And, bartending in the bar world is a little more of a free for all, but if everybody learned the building blocks, it would be you would have a better experience at every bar as opposed to some bars. That makes sense. Sorry, my answer.
No, totally.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that's kind of a perfect place to end. In other words, if you are watching and if you are new, learn your basics, my friend, because you're only going to be a better bartender in the end for learning it.
Absolutely.
So that being said,
we're not quite done
we
yet.
are at the end of our journey, our end of our time. But
Last
before
call,
we
if you
leave,
will.
it's time for our last call questions. We have only been, you all are our first bar professionals who are no longer behind the bar, but you do live in a fantastic city. So we're going to switch it up just a little bit and say, if we were coming into Austin and asking for recommendations, these are some of the questions that we might have for you since this is where you currently abide. So first question. We are in Austin and we are looking to have a great cocktail. Where should we head?
Roosevelt.
Oh.
But,
Okay, small victory, half step, Roosevelt Room.
Yep.
Those are our top three.
I would agree with
all three.
I would
of
agree with all
places,
three of those. Yes.
Absolutely.
I would also, hang on, let me also call out Drinkwell.
Which one?
Drink well.
Oh, drink well.
Drinkwell.
You know what? We haven't been, and I like.
No.
Oh.
Incredible owner operator Jessica Sanders. Go support.
Yeah.
It's worth the drive out. Kara was running it, and then what is her name? And it's going to come to me. Who's now running the program at Murray's Tavern?
Murray's Tavern.
Also Travis's spot. Sorry,
Nickel City.
Murray's, Nikki's. Yes, of course. Yeah.
But the last two times that we were out there,
I know. Yeah.
We just couldn't get out there.
Go and see Travis.
Kara and Allie, they were both running Drink Well, and it was supposed to be a fantastic spot and we just couldn't, because it's not quite in the city. Like you have to be
it's a little north, but don't let that scare you. It's not that far. And one other person, go and see Travis Hernandez at Sammy's.
Okay.
All right.
Heard. All right.
Yeah.
Where's the best burger in town?
Sour duck.
All right.
Okay. I'm getting a nod from Chad.
Okay, perfect.
I have an afternoon to kill. What am I going to do in Austin?
Go to Ski Shores.
Ski Shores.
What is Ski Shores?
Ski Shores.
So Ski Shores is in the canyon on the Colorado River, Lake Austin. What do you call it? It has like 5 names.
Yeah, it's out in the Lakeway area. It's a great little bar restaurant on the river.
It's scenic and beautiful, and honestly, the drink program's solid, and the food is solid. But it's a great afternoon.
Go get some shrimp tacos and a mezcal margarita.
Yes. Lovely.
All right, done and done. Yeah.
Is there a place I should eat nonstop in Austin? If I go to Austin, is there a place I should not stop?
Nista.
Oh, Nista Taqueria, Terry Black's barbecue. I mean, look, we live in an embarrassment of riches of barbecue. Yeah. There are incredible places. If you don't want to do the full wait in line thing, Terry Black's is solid.
Okay.
For a real, you're in Central Texas. You got to have some barbecue.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Also, I will throw in breakfast tacos. Like I'm a Southern California girl, and breakfast burritos are my thing. But breakfast tacos are kind of fun.
Veracruz and Tamale House.
Yeah, Veracruz.
Veracruz all day, and Tamale House is to me tamale. Yeah, I still remember Tamale House. The old Tamale House, number 3.
Okay, the old Tamale House number 3. And then where am I going for a beer and a shot at the end of the night?
You're going to Half Step, and you're going to go get a beer and a shot of Slow and Low.
I love it.
I love that.
I love it.
They have a great live music program as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Half Step is a great bar.
It's so cool.
So
Chris
fun.
Bostic is doing there is like absolutely incredible. But thank you so much, Chad and Christy, for joining us today. This is such a pleasure.
What a gift.
I mean, seriously, I hope you had as much fun as we did here on Manning Overboard. And if people want to find you on the socials, where should they look?
Instagram at Cuffs and Buttons
_at Cuffs and Buttons _OFC.
Okay, excellent.
We're not that social these days.
Yeah. We view and we will respond.
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect. That's all we need. And remember, our fans, our people that watch this thing, we can be found at Manning Overboard on Instagram at Manning Overboard or manningoverboard@gmail.com if you want to shoot us a message or have any comments or questions. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you the next time at our next happy hour. Cheers, and we are both done with our cocktails. So
cheers,
cheers for us, but high five.
We did it. No life rafts needed.
I almost wore my boat drinks hat. So there's a great bar in Florida, in the Jacksonville area, St. Augustine, technically. But they have a great, it's not the captain's hat. So I would not have stepped on their cap. But they have a great boat drinks hat. It's also a great bar if you guys are ever in the Florida area.
So Rob Crabtree, he was on the opening team at Half Step.
Okay.
And then he was the beverage director for Good Company Barbecue in Houston.
Mm-hmm.
And it is arguably, I would say, top 3 cane spirits bars in the country.
Oh, okay.
And they're not doing tiki and whatever. Well, I love tiki and there's that. This is cane spirits and, as they say, boat drinks. And so whatever, you have to go there. The food program is phenomenal. Best fish sandwich in Florida.
I just went there in the summer and I went for dogs and daiquiris. So it's like everybody brings their dog and you have a daiquiri.
Oh, that sounds like good delight.
For a daiquiri, especially a good one, but
that's great. So cool. Yeah. What?
Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers.
Manning Overboard, Happy Hour with Hotcakes and the Captain is produced and distributed by EatsDrinksTV.
A service of the nonprofit Center for Culinary Culture, home of the cocktail collection,
The Center for Culinary Culture,
telling the story of food and drink, one taste at a time.